we really need to talk about something that everyone has been discussing in this community this last week, and that is, are your 4K discs actually fake? Hello, my name's Elliot, and this channel is all about collecting Blu-rays. So, are your 4K discs fake? I've not just done that as clickbait. There's actually been some discussion in the last week or so about the validity of HDR or high dynamic range on 4K discs. There is a great YouTube channel called HDTVTest, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with, but Vincent over at HDTVTest has been doing some research into certain 4K discs and actually looking at the validity of the claims that they have high dynamic range or HDR in action on the discs. Vincent is much more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am, and he has all of the brilliant high-grade equipment to actually test this kind of thing on these 4K discs. But I thought I would share the news and get it out to as many people as possible, and also give you my thoughts on this, because I don't think it's as maybe clear-cut as saying these discs are fake or that they're not fake. There's a bit of nuance in it, so that's what this video is about. So what has Vincent's research actually found? Well, he made a video about a week ago about this particular disc. This is the Blade Runner 2049 4K Blu-ray. So what Vincent did was he looked at the maximum content light level throughout this disc, and that's measured in a unit known as NITS. So you might have heard people say that this disc hits 1000 nits or it's below 200 nits. Nits is just basically the level, so the higher the level, that basically means the higher the maximum brightness on that disc. So to put it into perspective for you, a standard Blu-ray, so a non-4K Blu-ray, would typically reach a maximum brightness of about 100 nits. Vincent actually goes into how this has recently been revised, and now anything below 200 nits is considered to be standard dynamic range. Again, he goes into this in his videos and explains it brilliantly, but that's basically the case. So anything below 200 nits is standard dynamic range, anything above is high dynamic range. So a 4K Blu-ray such as Blade Runner 2049, which advertises HDR on the back of the case and it's sold as having high dynamic range on the disc, you would expect this to go well beyond 200 nits in light level and even reach a maximum of about 1000 nits. But no, what Vincent's research has shown is that this disc doesn't go above 200 nits in maximum light level, except for the Sony logo at the start of the film. So technically you could say that this disc has HDR on it, but it's only during that opening logo, the Sony logo. So this is quite an odd thing. Why would they advertise this as HDR if actually the entire film does not have high dynamic range present? It was personally quite a big blow to find out that the Blade Runner 2049 disc did not actually have HDR throughout the film, because that's one of the discs that I mentioned to people as being like a reference quality 4K disc, and I always thought that, you know, it had the best that there was to offer on the format. But obviously I was wrong, because Vincent and his equipment has proved that this doesn't go into high dynamic range. This is such a shame, because we already have so many problems with 4K discs: bad audio, bad HDR, horrible DNR, digital noise reduction effects. So to have a disc like Blade Runner 2049 and to know that it could have been better actually makes me feel quite uncomfortable about saying that this is one of the best 4K discs. If you are enjoying this video about 4K Blu-rays, please do consider subscribing to the channel, because you would hear about all of my videos as soon as they get uploaded, and you could join in all of the great discussion and not miss a thing. Anyway, back to the video. Another disc that Vincent has done these tests on is Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and this is a film that is sold as having HDR on the disc, but doesn't really go above that 200 nits level, and you would not consider this an HDR disc if you looked at all of the readings that were in Vincent's testings. In his video on The Last Jedi, Vincent actually talks about how there are things in a Star Wars film, such as lightsabers, that you would expect to have maximum brightness dialed in. But in fact, all of the lightsabers in this film do not reach above 200 nits in terms of maximum light level. So that's crazy to advertise that this has HDR on the disc and that it's boasting a really high maximum light level when scenes with lightsabers do not go above 200 nits. That is crazy to me. It raises the question, are we being lied to by these companies when they tell us that these discs have HDR on them? And are these in fact fake HDR, fake 4K discs? Now, I'm not going to take that hard standpoint and actually say these are fake 4K discs, but we certainly deserve more transparency as consumers from these companies. If these discs do not go into high dynamic range, they should tell us these do not go into high dynamic range, and they shouldn't use it as a selling point for these discs. When you go into a store and you see these 4K discs on the shelf, most of them have those stickers on that say HDR compatible, HDR ready, and in fact, if we're getting discs that say that but they don't have HDR on them, that's not right, and they should be letting us know that these discs do not go into high dynamic range. Because it makes me look like an idiot when I recommend to my friends that they should get the Blade Runner 2049 disc because it displays everything that is good about 4K and it's a reference quality disc, when in fact it doesn't have HDR, so it makes me look like an idiot. The reason this whole discussion has been so controversial this last week or two is because there's been some blowback from people within the colour grading community and within the actual production community that say that the lack of HDR on these movies was actually an artistic choice and that they were never intended to go as bright as you would hope from an HDR 4K disc. In the example of Blade Runner 2049, the cinematographer Roger Deakins, who I believe to be one of the best working cinematographers today, he doesn't like HDR and he believes that during the colour grade the maximum brightness should not go that high. He just doesn't like it, and as an artistic choice he goes against it. There was another example that Vincent did on his channel looking at Alita Battle Angel, which is a film I don't have on a 4K disc at the moment. But the only time that that film went into high dynamic range was during the credits. So yes, these companies are not telling us the whole story. So the reason I'm making this video and the reason Vincent has made his videos is not to slam these studios, it's not to boycott them, but it's to hold them to better standards. So if this is something that you don't agree with, if you don't agree with them not letting us know if a disc doesn't go into high dynamic range, then they should be held accountable, and maybe we shouldn't buy these discs. We shouldn't be settling for a subpar experience when they could provide a much better experience. So that's my thoughts on this whole fake HDR, fake 4K thing. Do let me know in the comments below what you actually think about this though. Does this affect how you look at purchasing 4K discs now? And are you going to wait for proper in-depth reviews from people like Vincent before you actually buy these discs? Before I go, I want to say a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, my Fellini fanatics. I'll include your name on the screen right now. And if you're not already a part of my Patreon, please go and check it out. It's patreon.com/boutique Blu-rays. And you can check out all of the exclusive videos on there, and you can request things from me, and you can join our private Facebook group, etc. So I think there's a good community that we're building over there. So if it sounds like your kind of thing, then there's a link in the description. If you want to stick around on the channel and have more discussions about 4K and get some recommendations from me, by all means click one of the videos that's going to be recommended to you now on the screen, because I'm sure you could enjoy it. I'll be back with more videos very soon, so until then, stay well and keep watching great films.